Many consider Mars to be the new frontier, the next step in exploration and colonization for humans. Mars is a cold and distant planet who exposes trespassers to its wild storms, vastly different conditions, and unimaginable dangers every day. To survive its elements, one must have the proper skills and tools. Beyond food, water, and shelter, what do you need to survive in harsh environments? Often overlooked as a pseudoscience, psychology and mindset play more of a role in everyday success than most understand. According to Chris Conaway, survival depends a great deal on a person's ability to withstand stress in emergency situations. Survival more often depends on the individual's reaction to stress than upon the danger, terrain, or nature of the emergency. So in the face of overwhelming odds, I'm only left with one option. I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. I realized early on that I was going to have to cut my arm off to get free, but there was also resistance. I didn't want to do it, he says. But by the second day, I was already figuring out how I could do it. What made these legends survive their horrible situations? It was an unfaltering will to live and supreme dedication, because with the proper mindset, anything is possible. Chris Conway states, what affects you mentally affects you physically. If you think you can't survive, then you won't try to survive. A commitment or goal to live, refusal to give up, and a positive mental attitude greatly increase chances for survival. A study by Harvard Health Publications describes the fight or flight response. When confronted with stress, the eyes and ears relay information to the amygdala, who upon perceiving the signals as a threat sends a signal to the hypothalamus, activating the sympathetic nervous system by sending signals to the adrenal glands to release epinephrine into the bloodstream. This results in faster heartbeat, wider airways, sight and hearing and other senses become sharper. Something not addressed by many professionals is how fear affects decision making. It is often a precursor to the fight or flight response and has two capabilities. It can freeze you, increasing your heart rate, slow breathing, tunnel vision, and slow decision making. However, it can also mobilize you for action through the fight or flight response itself. There are many ways to avoid freezing up. However, two include keeping a positive mental attitude and playing out a what-if scenario. Kristen Conger states, in general terms, PMA combats your unconscious stress, allowing you to think more clearly and make better decisions. Matt Beecroft describes, playing out a what-if scenario in your head or being guided through one can help us prepare mentally for it happening in the real world. NASA thinks likewise when preparing for missions both to the ISS and future Mars missions. At the end of June 2010, ESA's 6 astronaut candidates were thrown out of a helicopter, left to drift at sea, and abandoned under the hot Mediterranean sun. It's only one way NASA trains their astronauts. For specific ISS and Mars missions, NASA exposes their astronauts to harsh winters in Russia for 3 days. However, training is not enough. According to Chris Chambers in The Guardian, astronauts traveling to and living on Mars will experience 4 major problems: social isolation, confinement, loss of privacy, and lack of mental health services. The combined effect will cause astronauts to experience fatigue, depression, insomnia, anxiety, boredom, dysphoria, psychotic thinking, and much worse. This is a subject NASA has mildly addressed in the past. Currently, Mars One doesn't seem to address any of these issues. According to Chris Chambers again, Mars One is either ignoring the psychological consequences of colonization or failing to disclose them. NASA is still adamant about training, and training for Mars One will take place in 3 phases. Phase 2 is the only phase that deals with psychological effects, and no information is given on how this might work. A quote from the site states, since these individuals will be unable to speak to friends and family on Earth face to face, a certain amount of coping skills are essential. Norbert Kraft, a NASA-associated psychologist's recent article in the Huffington Post describes how the most psychology associated with NASA are the behavior tests used for candidate selections. Kraft reports the constant reoccurrence of mission-jeopardizing situations that arose due to psychological, behavioral, and interpersonal aspects of crew performance, something inevitable to happen on Mars. While traveling to and staying on Mars, astronauts will experience a wide range of situations attempting to make them fail. Many overlook psychology as important to such situations. However, research shows that it is imperative that astronauts have healthy minds and thoughts in order to be able to succeed. Once the astronauts are mentally healthy and have the will to survive, they need tools to enable this possibility. The ISS has a vast array of tools, including but not limited to wrenches, ratchets, sockets, screwdrivers, etc. Tools of this nature will be essential on Mars, allowing repairs and construction for future habitats. Forget multi-tools. While vastly useful, how about a tool that can make all tools? An interesting thought, however odd, some are considering sending a large-scale 3D printer to Mars in order to facilitate the production of Martian tools. A well-designed 3D printer could allow astronauts to create whatever tool is needed for the job. Another vital tool that every astronaut will need on the surface of Mars is communication. Current astronauts on the ISS use basic handheld radios such as the Ericsson MP, Kenwood TMD-7, and Kenwood D710. Radios on Mars will take a similar approach and more than likely function as a multi-band walkie-talkie. Vital for communication between Mars and Earth is the accumulation and placement of satellites. Currently, there are 13 satellites orbiting Mars, 5 of which are active. The Mars Odyssey, launched back in 2001, is the oldest of the active satellites. For the past 15 years, NASA, ESA, and the Russian space industry has been preparing for communication between Mars and Earth. The most expected of tools used on Mars is a rover. Another essential tool or machine in this case, for long-distance geological research missions, it is absolutely essential. A rover will be more practical on later Mars missions when multiple habitats are built and transportation between them is needed. In order to sustain life and overcome injuries, one must have medicine. While people will be trained to handle medical support, a varied amount of medical tools and actual medicine is necessary in order to treat infections, etc. Prescription drugs, painkillers, disinfectants will all be vital to the astronauts on Mars. Finally, each astronaut will need to improvise some items of their own. Often given at least 3 to 5 personal objects to take on normal missions, the astronauts must make wise choices when trying to select a few objects for life. These tools, yes tools, whatever they may be, will help astronauts stay grounded and be themselves. Donna Shirley, manager of the Mars Exploration NASA JPL, would take books and computer games to keep her sane.